Welcome back to Sipa's Spimmer Garage. This time we are finishing up the 8HP swap for this E36 of mine. As you can see, it's a little bit dirty, so I've been dialing this for like 1 month now, and I've also visited track with this. And this has worked absolutely perfectly, so I'm pretty safe to make this final part of this 8HP swap. So yeah, let's continue where we left last time, which was the wiring. And this is now the wiring diagram that we need to follow. This is from the CANTCU wiki. This is the address for that. Kenneth has really good documentation and wiring diagrams and everything in that wiki, so I think that's like best of what I've seen for these kind of products. But anyways, this is the wiring for the first gen 8HP. So mine is 8HP45, that's first gen, so this is the wiring diagram that we need to use. There's some extra, this might look a little bit complicated first, but this section here is really what we need. So this is between the CANTCU and the transmission and the shifter, and there's also the OBD connector here. But anyways, let's go through this quickly. The CANTCU has some analog inputs and digital inputs that you can use for controlling the transmission or the shift modes or the paddle shifter or that kind of things. So this is what we will use for the barrel shifters. I don't know yet that I use the analog inputs or the digital inputs. I will wire in at least 2 wires for these, so I can have the paddles working. Then there's these digital outputs here, 4 of these. I will use one for the reversing lights and then another one for the brake lights, because I cannot currently use the original brake light switch in the E36, so 2 of these will be wired. And this is the connection for the ECU. It says here that the CAN3, which is for the ECU, is not terminated internally. So that's because usually the CAN termination is already in the car wiring. So when you swap it to the car that maybe has the original automatic transmission, or well, just newer car that originally has the CAN bus, it's usually terminated. So that's why it's not terminated here on the CANTCU. But I need to add terminator resistor here, somewhere like this, to the CANTCU end. And this will be 120 ohms. Then I will need to add another one here for the car, for the ECU end, because I don't have anything there else. So this will now yield to 60 ohm terminated CAN bus. Then it says that CAN1 and CAN2, these are terminated internally, so here I don't need to add that. So basically we just need to run all of these wires here. This might look complicated at first, but actually we only have 2 CAN buses here that go to the HHP transmission and then to the HHP shifter that I will also install. This is not mandatory, but I will want to use that. You can use basically any shifter, but I will just use the HHP standard shifter because those are cheap and easy to install. Then we need to have the wake up signal from CANTCU to the transmission and the shifter. Then we also need to have this CAN1 for the OBD connector. In that way you can read the fault codes and connect with the INPA and that kind of things. And I think if you want to flash some software with the XHP, you also need this one. Then there's a ground for everything here. This can be grounded anywhere in the chassis. There's a lot of ground points near the CANTCU mounting point in the car, so I will use something there. And then there's a power that goes to the CANTCU and the transmission and the OBD port and the shifter and everything. And it says here that it needs to have that time delay relay. But I will use the ECU to do that, so I don't need to add this time delay relay. I will explain that a little bit later. But yeah, that's what we need to do. So we will first do this part of the wiring. I will add few extra wires here for the lights and then few wires here so that I can have the parallel shifter work. But yeah, let's do the wiring now. I think we will start with the HHP connector. So I will run the wires for this connector and plug this in, and then I know the lengths all the way to the shifter and the CANTCU and every part of the wiring. So in that way this will be probably the easiest to do. Noin. Noin. Sitten vielä nämä.
Tässä oli sitten se virallinen oikea kasaustapa.
Niin, sekin vielä.
Oikealle ja puutit kiinni ja momentum täysille ja
This connector needs to be waterproof, and of course, because I don't have all the pins in and all the wires, this will leak through all the moisture. There is plugs that you can put here to stop moisture going in, but I don't have those, so I will use these. What are these? Maybe grommets used for these wires, and I have some hot glue inside, so that will stop the moisture from getting inside the connector and ruining this. Like that. Then we need to lock in place those pins, so this should go in like that. Yeah, and then this will be pushed out. Like this, and now this is ready to be assembled in the car. This is how I will run the wiring. So I have the connector now plugged into the transmission. I will have some kind of grommet here. I need to make sure that the wiring doesn't hit the guibo there. Then I will have split there. I have marked that with the tape. So from this split there will be the CAN wires and the power wires, and well, all of these wires here, also to the shifter here, so some kind of system here. Then it will go here. I have another mark here, so here I will add connector to connect this to the car. So I will have the power, the CAN bus from the ECU, and the ground wire that I don't seem to have here, so I need to add that. So I will have small split and connector here to wire these in the wiring. So this will be the power and ground connected here, and then I will run the wiring from here, original route somewhere here, to put the CANTCU around here behind the glove box, and yeah, that's the wiring. So I think I can now pull this out. I will mark where I cut these, pull this out, and I will make the split for the shifter and split for the connecting to the car, and then put the seating and everything over these wires, and yeah, that's it. So quite simple wiring. This starts to be done. I have the 8 HP connector here. Then this will receive the shifter connector. Then this one goes here. This one will connect to the car. I have the power ground, and then the CAN tree from the ECU at here. I then have 4 extra wires here. I will put this kind of 8-pin Deutsch connector here to connect to the car, and then this all go to the CANTCU. That will be terminated there. I need to put seating over this, but there's one extra step. This CAN tree, this doesn't have terminator resistor on this end, so I did that 120 ohm resistor here, and this will be crimped here with the CANTCU connector. And these extra wires, this will be at least for the paddle shifters, then to the reversing light and that kind of thing. So I think the extra 4 wires should be enough. I don't even have bigger Deutsch connectors put, so let's hope the 4 wires here is enough. Oh, and then another thing, the CAN1 or CANTCU needs to go to the OPD connector, so I will also add another splice here from the connector that goes to the OBD port again because I don't have bigger connectors there, and the OBD connector is really close to here, so I will just put 2-pin connector here for the OBD port CAN. So yeah, let's put the seating over this and let's start crimping the rest of those connectors to this wiring harness. And this is how the wiring harness turned out. There is the CANTCU connector and the TCU itself already plugged in. Then there is the Deutsch connector to the car and for the OBD2 port. Then the shifter connector to the trans, and I added some rubber boot for it to pass through to the trans tunnel. Time to install everything to the car. En. Pikkusen narahtelee täällä. No. Täällä pitää johonkin tuo johtopiste kiinnittää, että tuossa tuonne kartaanissa ensimmäisenä. Okay, we are almost ready to plug in the CANTCU to the PC and see if the CANTCU works and the transmission wakes up. But before that, let's take a quick look on this ECU, what we have here. So the CANTCU needs the CAN tree from the ECU, and it comes from here, from this broken plug here, but let's ignore that. I have also added the termination resistor here on this end, because this car of course doesn't have the CAN bus originally, so I needed to add that one. And then we also need power for the CANTCU and HHP, and for that this comes really useful, because this MS45 ECU and I think MS43 and MS42 also, they have this kind of power delivery thing here. So the ECU controls this relay here and this one here. So this I think is for the coils and this is for everything else, and all the power comes through this. ECU controls this, and there's this fuses, and from these fuses the power goes to all the things in the engine. But the handy thing is that this relay, because this is controlled from the ECU has delay function. So when you power off the car, it can keep this alive for some time, and that time is configurable. I think normally it's like 5 seconds, so it keeps this alive like for 5 seconds. I don't know why, but anyways, you can increase that delay. So I have now increased the delay in this ECU for 60 seconds, so the recommendation in the CANTCU wiki is that it's something between 30 and 60 seconds, so I did put that to 60 seconds, meaning that now when we turn off the car, the ECU will power on this relay for 60 seconds before powering off. You could of course control another relay from this to power on the CANTCU, but this engine doesn't have all the things that the MS45 normally has, so it's missing at least the secondary air pump and the secondary lambda sensors and things like that. So I did swap around some pins, so now I have this one fuse here, I think it was this one, that is basically totally free. Everything else is connected to these 4 wires here, and this is totally free, so I did run this wire from this fuse all the way. I think it goes here and then it goes from there and it goes to the CANTCU. So CANTCU and the HHP is actually now powered through this fuse box here and this relay, and with that we get the time delay relay, so we don't need to care about that. But yeah, this is quite easy way to do the time delay relay if you have the MS42, MS43 or MS45 ECU. But anyways, we can push this back in. We only have the CAN bus and the power from here, and everything is now done, so I think we can now plug in the CANTCU to the PC and see how it works. Totta, firmware update. Pistetään firmware update. Aina päivitetään. Ready, start update. Okei. No ei hyvältä näytä. Mitä ei tapahdu? Ei mutta varmaan konfiguroida tämän, että mä teen mitään ilmasta. Konfiguration. Protocol. F-series first geni sieltä. Car EQ protocol. Tässä ollaan E6X moodissa. Täällä on se tuppi. Joo. Yes. Shifter. Default. Conf. Joo. Pistetäänpä, että update. Okay, at this point I had some problems. The CAN3 did show some action there, but the CAN1 and CAN2, these were totally dead at this point. I was wondering why, and I did measure the resistance between these CAN1 and CAN2 wires, and it showed 120 ohms, which means that it's not terminated correctly. As I said earlier, this CAN1 and CAN2, these are internally terminated in the CANTCU in here. I somehow thought that the 8-HP transmission is also internally terminated, but it actually isn't. So yeah, I needed to add terminator resistors here and here, like this, and then these wires were at the 60 ohms and I could get some action on the CAN1 and CAN2 lines. If you are doing this by yourself, there's actually quite many wiring kits available for the CANTCU, so you don't need to do this from scratch like I did and don't have these kind of problems. There's actually quite many even plug and play kits for E60 and E90 cars and that kind of things. So if you have the money and not the time or the skill, you can just buy ready-made wiring kits for this. So all this will be much more simpler than I'm doing now. After fixing the wiring, I had yet another problem, which was that this ignition on, this was staying at 0, and I did only have CAN1 and CAN2 load for only little while here, and also the CAN3 load, it dropped pretty much to 0. And the reason for that was that I was using this BME E60, E70, E90, E80 protocol here, but this is actually only used for when you have this CANTCU in those cars. This is not made for the standalone use. The reason is that when you select this one, the CANTCU is expecting the CAS to send the ignition on signal on the CAN bus, but of course this is E36, I don't have the CAS module here, I only have the E46 ECU that is in the E60 CAN bus mode, so I don't have that, and the CANTCU didn't get the ignition on message on the CAN bus, and it didn't turn on the wake up pin and that kind of things. In this case, I need to use this BMW EDC60 MS80 standalone. The naming can be a bit weird, but it's basically this mode, but you don't need the other modules in the car to work, so it doesn't rely on the ignition on signal on the CAN bus, that kind of thing. So now in this mode, I have the ignition on at 1, and we have the good loads for all the CAN buses here, so everything's working fine. We also have the engine water and oil temps there as they should be, and also if I go on the driver's seat. So now if I press the brake, you can see that the brake switch goes to 1, so the CANTCU actually knows if the brake is pressed or not. That's mandatory for the CANTCU to work. It comes from the ECU through the CAN bus, so I didn't need to wire that in, but it works like that. And also we have the TPS info here like that. But yeah, now we have everything working, so the ignition on signal works, TPS works, brake switch work, we have the CAN loads. This is basically ready to use. Of course we need to unlock the transmission at this time. Currently it's unlocked, as you can see. When I was setting up this first time, I had the older firmware version, this one wasn't out yet. So Kenneth did connect remotely and he did flash the transmission to get this unlocked. With this version here, you can even do that unlocking yourself, so here's the flash utility. So in here you can unlock the transmission yourself, and you can even in future you can flash these better softwares on the transmission. It's not yet in this version, but I think in the next one these better flashes should be available for this software. But at this state, this is ready for the first try, but the car is not ready, so we need to swap the pedal and do the other mechanical things before we can actually try out the transmission, so let's continue with that. We can now remove the clutch pedal and swap out the correct brake pedal. I think this should be fairly easy to remove. Then we need to take out the clutch master cylinder. I think there's 2 bolts back here. By the way, I just plugged the clutch line like that, so there's a bolt and clamp like that. Not the best way to do that, but another way would be to get the automatic version of this brake reservoir here that has this outlet blocked, but yeah, I don't have that for now, and so this is probably one of those permanent temporary solutions. Next up is the brake pedal. I had the whole new assembly from the automatic E36, but I think it's easier to just remove this pedal itself. Swap out this one. Like this. This is the assembly from the automatic car. It has the wider pedal and this bolt is shorter, so I need to swap in this pedal and this shorter bolt, and I think we are 10 done. I did not find the correct part number to plug those holes for the clutch lines, so I did just use the sound deadening to plug out those holes. My friend has E36 that is originally auto, and even that didn't have plugs on those holes. There was only some factory sound deadening there on those holes, so yeah, I think that's fine solution for this. That's now done. we have the automatic brake pedal there and no clutch things. I think I need to buy the grommets here that come with the automatic car, but yeah, that can happen later. For the MS45 I needed to update this brake switch here. So this is just mechanical switch in the E36 controlling the braking lights directly. And if you run like MS42 or MS43, you can use that original E36 switch directly. It works just fine. You can configure that in the ECU. But the MS45 is so modern that it has no support for the mechanical switch. So I needed to update to this E39 and E60 and newer one. This is Hall sensor. It has the brake switch and brake test switch, and this seems to work just fine with the ECU because you cannot get the transmission to drive without pressing the brake. So the ECU and the CANTCU, they need to know when the brake is pressed. So this is like quite mandatory to have, but that now works. This is now a little bit hack. So this is the plus 12 volts that comes from the car, and this would have the switch. So this wire goes to the brake lights. This is now connected here to the switch so that the switch works. But of course now the brake lights don't work. I can of course just put relay here between these wires to control the brake lights, but I need some way to control that. This Hall switch, these cannot control the relay directly. In the newer cars, those have the light control module, but I think in this case I will use the CANTCU as a light module. So the CANTCU has few programmable outputs, so I will use one for the brake switch. And then another thing is that we need the reversing lights. Again, that's mechanical switch in the E36 and it will go from the transmission, but now I don't have that. So I will need to add another relay for the reversing lights. Those are somewhere here. I need to find it and then have the CANTCU control that. Okay, those are now in. So this is for the brake lights. I did use this kind of Hella solid state relay here because I don't want to hear any clicking here when I press brake, so that's why there's that Hella solid state relay there. I don't know, this is still my old crap that I need to take out. But anyways, that's there. Then this relay here, this is for the reversing lights. That's also connected directly to the reversing lights like stock one would be, the switch in the transmission, and then again this is also controlled by the CANTCU. Let's then make this cross member a little bit stronger because this is now a bit wobbly. So I think we are putting sheet metal here and then something here so that I have support from two different spots. So yeah, let's take all this apart and support the transmission, and then we can make this a little bit stronger. This is how it looks like now. So the driveshaft is in, and yeah, I have pretty much all the new bolts and everything is looking really good. This is now sturdy, and yeah, I think we can now continue. This is fine. It looks like this fill plug here is in quite annoying place when you put the exhaust here. So I think I will now take off the pan. I think this is even cracked, but the service kit comes with the new one. So I will swap out the pan and put in the initial oil in the trans. And yeah, then we can continue putting this back together. I think to actually set the oil level, this needs to be warmed up to I think like 60 degrees. So of course the exhaust everything needs to be in. I don't know if I can then fill this more with the exhaust on. It could be at least annoying. So yeah, I will do that one now before putting on the exhaust. Next we fill up the oil. I will use this Swedish penis pump looking thing.
One Swedish-made penis enlarger pump.
I've never used this kind of thing, but this seems to be the easiest route to do this. So yeah, let's try. I did put the exhaust in. It seems to be fitting like from factory. Of course, this mount here I need to take it off because it used to be on the rear of the transmission, but yeah, it's not possible yet. So I need to figure out some kind of support for this because this is now quite wobbly. Without that, it will crack this exhaust at some point. Also, this is now really close to these rubber mounts here. So I need to make some kind of heat shield here, at least some kind of temporary. Yeah, I think it needs to be permanent. This exhaust is temporary. I will make new one at some point, so I'm not too worried about this. It fits, but yeah, I think I will leave this support to that time when I actually have the exhaust that I will run in this. So I will make the support for that. I think I will put that on maybe these bolts here. because it needs to be on the transmission so that it is moves with the engine. This would be really easy spot to put that on, but yeah, then this is chassis, this is the like engine and needs to be on here. So I think these 2 bolts here might be good for some kind of support from here. But yeah, it seems to be also tight here. If I would leave this exhaust, I would grind here, but I will make new one with slight different route, so this is not a problem. So yeah, that will do for now. Then to actually start this, I need to have the oil lines. I have these from, I think these were from F10 or something, the original plastic lines. These seem to be fitting quite well here. Well, not perfect, but I think these work. There's a lot of different AN adapters and fittings, all kinds of things that you can get for these, especially if the car has like 6 HP or something originally. The oil lines are quite easy to do. Usually these kind of cars that have absolutely nothing, people tend to use the AN fittings and everything, but all the AN lines and the fittings, those are really expensive, so yeah, I don't really have money for that. So let's try this kind of OEM route. These lines were like 10 euros from Ovogo, so not bad. The problem started with this heat exchanger, so this has the oil lines in and out, and then there's also coolant lines in and out, and this should go here, but there's actually no really room for this, so I don't know what I will do with this. Yeah, I think I will to carve out some kind of knots on the frame rail or something to make this actually fit, but let's see. This seems to be like the biggest problem currently with this. Of course, I could just use some kind of AN lines and have cooler in front of here, that kind of things, but as I said, I want to make this with some kind of cheap OM route, so let's try fitting this and then see how it works. After a lot of trial and error, it finally sits there. I'm not happy how it sits there, but it's there and I think it will work. I need to carve out a big hole for the chassis like I thought to fit that, and it's still a little bit crooked to have all the ground clearance, but I think that's fine. You can see the oil lines are there, not otherwise in the back. Then the coolant lines. The coolant input comes from the hose that comes from the engine to the expansion tank, like that one there. It's actually this line coming down to the heat exchanger, and it then comes out of the back, and it's this line going back to the upper radiator hose. So that's how it works. But yeah, it's there. I don't recommend doing like that. I recommend getting some kind of better solution for this, but I think that will work for now for me.
Kyllä se vähän jypskyttää sen.
We got the engine started last night, so in theory everything should work now, so we can continue with the oil filling procedure. Of course this transmission is now bone dry because nothing was attached, so we did let it run a little while, and I will now top off the trans when it's still cold, because probably turbine and everything has filled up now, so there should be quite much less oil in the pan. I think these are like 8.5 liters as a capacity, and I did only put in like 3.5 liters, so less than half that should be there, because that was all that the pan did fit. So yeah, let's fill up the oil pan, and I will also release this neutral lockout here, because of course we need to push this car around here in the garage, and you cannot do that unless the engine is running with the HHP. So here's this mechanical lockout for the neutral. So yeah, when you screw this in, then you have the transmission, the neutral permanently. But yeah, now when the engine runs, we shouldn't need that. If you don't know about this engine, I highly recommend watching my series about building this. I will link that up there. But yeah, just release that and put in some oil. And I did temporarily put some heat trapping here to prevent me burning myself up when I tighten this or open that oil fill plug there. But yeah, I think now we can start this and go through the gears and, or well, see if it goes through the gears and continue from that. Lähti vissiin pyörimään.
Mikä?
Renkaat.
Joo.
Pyöriikö? Joo. Kakkonen.
Selvästi valuu öljyä. Eikä vaan.
Then the shifter. There's a huge list of different shifters you can use with the CANTCU. You can see the list on the CANTCU site and the instructions how to use that. You can, for example, make this like fake sequential transmission so that you have the sequential shifter in the center console and use that. But I did go with the most boring and cheapest route. So this is the F series stock shifter. I think this is from F10. So these are like 30, 40, 50 euros about that. So really cheap and these are easy to use. You just need to run the wiring for the shifter. This is the early before 2012 version. This is what I bought first, but this is actually quite tall and there's this, the connector is here in the bottom like that. It's there and that will protrude from the bottom quite a bit, and the center console in the E36 it's quite low, so this will poke out quite a bit from the center console and that looks ugly. So I actually got another one. This is the newer, I think this is the after 2012 version, and this has the different, so this has the 8-pin connector, this has the 10-pin connector there, and this is little bit like if we put this here. So you can see that this is not as high as the old one. So I will use this one and this will go to another project. This will hopefully look okay in the car. I need to see how this works, but this is pretty much as low as I can go with these stock shifters. Then of course these look quite ugly with the silver thing here. There's no silver in the car anywhere, so a bit weird. So that's why I got these covers here. So I have the gloss one and flat black one cover for these. So hopefully this will fit the insides much better with that. But yeah, let's install this now. And this is how the end result looks like. I was afraid that this will look like really out of place here in the E36 because this shifter is so much newer, but I think with this black cover and everything this almost looks like belongs this car. It's not perfect, but yeah, I think this looks rather okay with this, so I'll leave it like that for now. And it's now about a month after that last clip. I will try to keep this short because the video is already quite long, so yeah. What comes to the transmission, it has worked absolutely perfectly. There has been nothing wrong with that. Like, once we got the correct settings for the CANTCU, it has worked perfect. I haven't had need to touch anything for that, so yeah. I did run 2 or 3 weeks with the stock transmission software and there was really nothing wrong with that. The comfort mode works really well and the sport mode and everything. I mainly used the time to tune the engine control unit because this is not the stock engine, so it needed some tuning. But still it runs the original ECU for this engine, so the communication for the transmission, it was spot on the first try. It now uses the newer CAN bus, the BN2000 that is in the E60, E90 and those newer BMWs, and well, it works really well with this transmission. I know it also works with the older CAN protocol too, but this one, all the blips and everything work perfectly. So for example, if I put this to the manual mode, like I can flip through the gears like this. I don't need to touch the throttle at all, so yeah. The protocol works really well, so if I like tell this to put the smaller gear, it will just do that and I don't really feel the gear going smaller. But after that 2 or 3 weeks, I was in the phase of the tuning that I needed to have more revs for the engine because this will rev past 7,000 happily and actually make some power there. And this as stock, I think it shifts at 600, 400, so it was a bit too early. So for that, Kenneth made me his software here, which is basically same as the Race Plus that will be available for the CANTCU a bit later. But in the manual mode, the RPM limit is like 8400 or something, so it doesn't really upshift at all in the manual mode. That was mainly for the engine tuning, but the actual Race Plus software, it works really well. So if we now go to the highway there, I will put that to the sport mode, and let's floor in the ramp. I don't know if that comes through the video or anything, but it really like kicks in the gears. It's not like normal automatics. It's more like I have driven the F80 M3 with the DCT. So the gear changes now in the sport mode and the manual mode with the Kenneth's Race Plus software. It's more like DCT shifts. It's like really kicks in the gear like that. And even though it's the Race Plus software, still like the normal driving in the comfort drive mode and even on the sport mode, if you don't follow this, it still shifts really smoothly. Nothing wrong there. So yeah, it's really enjoyable to drive. Oh, and one more thing. I really like the feature in the HHP that when you give some throttle, it actually skips some gears when downshifting. So I'm now on the highway around 90 kilometers per hour. This is 60 gear. So let's say I need to pass someone, so I will give this little bit gas. So just like that, it skips from 6 to 4 without going through the 5, so that's really nice. But yeah, I think